What happens when a legendary actor, known for his calm and gentle way of speaking, gets pushed so far that he walks out of a live television interview? It only took 39 seconds for one of Britain's most beloved hosts to turn a friendly chat into an absolute nightmare that would shock everyone watching. This is the story of how everything fell apart. The morning started like any other morning on the show. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and the audience was settling into their seats. Michael Caine walked onto the set with a warm smile on his face, wearing a nice suit and looking happy to be there. He waved at the audience and they clapped for him. Everyone was excited because Michael Caine is a very famous actor who has been in so many movies that people love. He sat down in the chair across from Lorraine Kelly, ready to talk about his new film and share some stories from his long career. Lorraine Kelly sat there with her notes, her hair done perfectly, her makeup looking bright under the studio lights. Next to her sat two other panel members, Sarah and James, who were there to join in the conversation. Sarah was a movie critic who always had strong opinions about films, and James was a television presenter who liked to joke around and keep things light. The four of them were supposed to have a nice, easy conversation about movies and acting. Before the interview started, during the commercial break, Sarah leaned over to Michael and said, "It is such an honor to meet you. I have been a fan of your work for my entire life." Michael smiled warmly and said, "That is very kind of you to say. Thank you." James joined in and said, "My dad took me to see one of your films when I was just a boy. It is still one of my favorite memories." Michael looked genuinely touched. He said, "That means more to me than you know. That is why I do what I do. To create memories for people." Lorraine did not join in this friendly chat. She was busy looking at her notes, making little marks with her pen, getting ready for something. Sarah noticed and thought it was a bit odd, but she did not say anything. She just assumed Lorraine was being professional, preparing for the interview. The commercial break ended. The cameras came back on. The lights got even brighter. Lorraine put on her big television smile and started the interview the way she always did, with a big smile and friendly words. She said, "Michael, it is so wonderful to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for coming on the show." Michael smiled back and said, "Thank you for having me, Lorraine. It is always nice to be here." Everything seemed fine at first. Lorraine asked him about his new movie, and Michael told everyone about the story and the characters. He talked about working with the director and the other actors. He made some funny jokes that made everyone laugh. Sarah and James were nodding along, smiling, enjoying the conversation. The audience was happy too. It looked like it was going to be a great interview. Michael was in the middle of telling a funny story about something that happened on set when Lorraine suddenly interrupted him. She said, "That is fascinating, Michael. Really it is. But I want to shift gears a bit here." Michael stopped talking and looked at her, ready to answer whatever question was coming. He was used to interviews. He had done thousands of them over his long career. He knew how to handle himself, but he had no idea what was about to happen. Lorraine looked down at her notes, and her smile got a little bit different. It was still a smile, but it had something else in it now. Something that made Sarah feel uncomfortable. She looked back up at Michael and said, "Now, Michael, I have to ask you something. A lot of people have been talking about your acting lately. Some people are saying that maybe you are a bit too old to keep playing these kinds of roles. What do you think about that?" The audience went quiet. Sarah and James looked at each other with surprise on their faces. That was not the kind of question anyone expected. It was rude. It was mean. And it came out of nowhere. Michael Caine's smile faded a little bit, but he stayed calm. He had been in this business long enough to know how to handle difficult questions. He said, "Well, Lorraine, I think age is just a number. I have been acting for a very long time, and I still love what I do. I think experience makes an actor better, not worse." It was a good answer, a kind answer, a professional answer. Michael was giving Lorraine a chance to move on, to go to another topic, to let this awkward moment pass. But Lorraine was not done. She kept going. She leaned forward in her chair and said, "But Michael, surely you must see that there are younger actors out there who could bring more energy to these parts. Do you not think it might be time to step aside and let the next generation have their turn?" Now the audience was really uncomfortable. You could hear people shifting in their seats. Someone coughed nervously. Sarah looked down at her hands, not sure what to say. James cleared his throat nervously. This was not normal. This was not how interviews were supposed to go. Michael Caine sat up a little straighter in his chair. His voice was still calm, but you could hear that he was not happy. He said, "Lorraine, I have never stopped anyone from getting work. I work hard. I do my job well. And directors choose me because they want me in their films. I do not think that is something I should apologize for." Lorraine laughed, but it was not a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that makes you feel small. She waved her hand in the air, like she was brushing away his answer, and said, "Oh, Michael, I am not asking you to apologize. I am just saying that maybe, just maybe, you are holding on a bit too tight to something that has passed you by. I mean, when was the last time you were in a truly great film? Not just a film, but a truly great one." The audience gasped. Some people actually said, "Oh no," out loud. Sarah could not stay quiet anymore. She jumped in and said, "Lorraine, I think that is a bit unfair. Michael has had an incredible career, and he is still doing amazing work. His new film is wonderful." But Lorraine waved her hand at Sarah like she was swatting a fly. She said, "Oh, Sarah, please. We are all adults here. We can have an honest conversation. Michael knows what I am talking about. Do you not, Michael?" Michael Caine looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were not angry, but they were serious. Very serious. He said, "Lorraine, I came here today to talk about my new film. I did not come here to be insulted on live television." Lorraine put her hand on her chest like she was shocked, like she could not believe what she was hearing. She said, "Insulted? Michael, I am not insulting you. I am just asking questions. That is what journalists do. That is what I do. Surely you are not so sensitive that you cannot handle a few honest questions." The word sensitive hung in the air like a bad smell. Everyone knew what she was trying to do. She was trying to make Michael look weak. She was trying to make it seem like he could not handle criticism. But Michael was not weak. He was one of the strongest people in that room, and everyone was about to see it. James tried to help. He could see that this was going very wrong. He said, "Maybe we should talk about something else. Michael, tell us about your favorite memory from filming your new movie. I bet the audience would love to hear about that." But Lorraine was not going to let it go. She turned to James with an annoyed look on her face and said, "James, let me handle this, please. I think Michael and I are having a very important discussion here. This is the kind of real conversation that people want to see." Then she looked back at Michael and said, "You know, Michael, I have interviewed hundreds of actors over the years. Thousands, probably. Most of them understand that part of being famous is answering tough questions. But you seem to think you are above all that. Why is that? What makes you so special?" The audience gasped even louder this time. Someone in the back row actually stood up like they were thinking about leaving. Sarah shook her head, looking upset and disappointed. James put his face in his hands. The camera operators looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Should they keep filming? Should they cut away? Nobody knew. Michael Caine sat very still. He was not smiling anymore. He looked at Lorraine and said, very quietly, very calmly, "I am not above anything, Lorraine. But I do know the difference between a tough question and a rude comment. And what you are doing right now is not journalism. It is just mean. You are being mean for the sake of being mean." Lorraine laughed again, that same uncomfortable laugh that made everyone cringe. She said, "Mean? Oh, Michael, come on. You are a big star. You have won awards. You have millions of pounds in the bank. You can take it. Yeah, or are you telling me that the great Michael Caine is too soft to handle a little bit of criticism? Is that what you were saying? That was it. That was the moment. That was when everything changed. Michael Caine took a deep breath. He put his hands on the arms of the chair and started to stand up. Sarah's eyes went wide. James sat up straight. The camera operators did not know what to do. The whole studio seemed to hold its breath. Time seemed to slow down. Lorraine realized what was happening, and her smile disappeared completely. Her face changed. She looked worried now. She said, "Michael, wait. Where are you going? We are in the middle of an interview. You cannot just leave." Michael stood up completely now. He looked at her with that calm, serious look and said, "No, Lorraine, we are not in the middle of an interview. An interview is when two people have a conversation with respect for each other. An interview is when someone asks questions because they genuinely want to know the answers, not because they want to hurt someone. What you have been doing is trying to make me look bad on your show so you can have something exciting to talk about. I have been in this business for more than 50 years, and I have never been treated with such disrespect." The audience started whispering to each other. Some people were nodding their heads in agreement. Sarah said, "Michael is right, Lorraine. This has gone too far. Way too far." Lorraine's face turned red. She did not like being called out like this, especially not on her own show, in front of her own audience, with all the cameras watching. She said, "Michael, sit down. You are being ridiculous. And you're being childish. I was just doing my job." Michael shook his head slowly. He said, "Your job is to ask questions, yes. But your job is also to treat your guests with basic human decency. You have failed to do that today. You have failed completely. So I am leaving." Lorraine stood up too, her voice getting louder and louder. She said, "You cannot just walk out. We have cameras on. We are live. Everyone is watching. This is completely unprofessional. Do you know how unprofessional this is?" Michael turned to look at her one more time. His voice was still calm, but it was strong and clear. He said, "Unprofessional? Lorraine, you spent the last 10 minutes insulting me, questioning my career, suggesting that I am too old to work, and trying to make me feel worthless. You tried to humiliate me in front of all these people and everyone watching at home. And now you want to talk to me about being professional? I think you need to look in a mirror. I really think you need to take a long, hard look at yourself." The audience actually clapped at that. Not everyone, but enough people that you could hear it clearly. Some people even cheered. Lorraine looked shocked. She could not believe it. She could not believe that her own audience was clapping for the guest and not for her. Her face got even redder. She said, "Excuse me, this is my show. This is my show, and I will not be spoken to like this on my own show. How dare you?" James finally stood up and said, "Lorraine, maybe we should take a break. We should just take a quick break and calm down." But Lorraine was not listening to James. She was not listening to anyone. She was staring at Michael Caine, her face getting redder and redder, her hands shaking. She said, "Fine, fine. If you want to walk out like a child, like a spoiled child, then go ahead. But do not expect anyone to take you seriously after this. You just proved my point about you being past your prime. You just proved that you cannot handle the real world anymore." That comment made the audience gasp even louder than before. Some people actually booed. They booed their own host. Sarah stood up now too and said, "Lorraine, stop it. Just stop. You need to stop right now." Michael Caine did not yell. He did not scream. He did not throw anything. He did not make a big scene. He just looked at Lorraine with sadness in his eyes, genuine sadness, and said, I feel sorry for you, Lorraine. I really do. Because somewhere along the way, somewhere in your career, you forgot that the people who come on your show are not here to be your punching bags. They are not here to make you feel important. They are here because they believe you will treat them with respect and have a real conversation. I hope you remember that before you lose everything. I really hope you do. And then he walked away. He took his microphone off carefully, handed it to one of the crew members who was standing nearby, looking scared, and walked right off the set. The cameras followed him as he went through the studio doors and disappeared down the hallway. The audience did not know what to do. Some people were still clapping. Some people were just sitting there with their mouths open, shocked. Sarah had tears in her eyes. James looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but there. Lorraine stood there in the middle of her set, alone, with all the cameras pointed at her. Her face was still red. Her hands were shaking a little bit. She tried to smile, tried to laugh it off, but it did not work. Nobody was buying it. She said, "Well, that was unexpected. I suppose some people cannot handle a real conversation. Some people just want to be treated like precious little flowers." But nobody was listening to her anymore. The producers were running around trying to figure out what to do. The audience was talking among themselves, some people looking angry, some people looking sad. Sarah had already taken off her microphone and was walking off the set too. She did not want to be part of this anymore. James sat there looking at Lorraine and said, "I think you went too far this time, Lorraine. I really think you went too far." Lorraine tried to argue. She said, "Too far? How did I go too far? I was just asking questions. Why is everyone being so sensitive? When did everyone become so sensitive?" James shook his head and said, "Those were not questions, Lorraine. Those were attacks. You know the difference. We all know the difference. Everyone watching knows the difference. Michael Caine is one of the greatest actors of all time, a legend, and you treated him like he was nothing, like he was garbage. That is not okay. That is never okay." Lorraine looked around at her set, at the crew members who were avoiding eye contact with her, at the audience members who were getting up and leaving early, at the empty chair where Michael had been sitting just moments ago. She realized that something big had just happened, something that she could not take back, something that would follow her forever. She had pushed too hard. She had been too mean. And now everyone had seen it. The whole world had seen it. One of the producers came over with a very serious look on his face. He was sweating, and he looked worried. He said, "Lorraine, we need to go to a commercial break right now. Right now. We cannot stay on the air like this." Lorraine nodded, but she looked like she was in shock. She looked like she could not believe what had just happened. She said to the camera, her voice shaking a little bit, "We will be right back after this break." The cameras turned off, and the studio lights dimmed a little bit. The audience was filing out, still talking loudly about what they had just seen. People were pulling out their phones, probably to tell their friends and family what had happened. Sarah was gone. James was packing up his things, clearly done with the whole situation, and Lorraine just stood there in the middle of everything, alone, realizing that she had just made one of the biggest mistakes of her career. Maybe the biggest mistake. Outside the studio, Michael Caine was getting into a car that was waiting for him. His assistant was there, looking worried. She said, "Are you okay, Michael?" Michael smiled at her, that same gentle smile he always had. He said, "I am fine. I am perfectly fine." A reporter who had been waiting outside came running over. He said, Michael, can you make a statement about what just happened in there?" Michael looked at the reporter and said, very calmly, "But I said everything I needed to say in there. I hope Lorraine learned something from this. That is all I have to say." Back in the studio, during the commercial break, Lorraine was sitting in her chair, her head in her hands. The producer was standing next to her, talking to her in a low, serious voice. He said, "Lorraine, what were you thinking? What on earth were you thinking?" Lorraine looked up at him with tears in her eyes. Real tears. She said, "I do not know. I do not know what I was thinking. I thought it would be good television. I thought people would like it." The producer shook his head. He said, "Good television? Lorraine, you just humiliated a beloved actor on live television. You insulted him, you attacked him, and now he has walked out. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to the show? Do you have any idea?" Lorraine just sat there, not knowing what to say. She kept replaying the conversation in her mind. The questions she had asked, the comments she had made, the look on Michael's face when he stood up to leave. She wondered if she could have done things differently. She wondered if it was too late to fix what she had broken. James came over to her and said quietly, "Are you okay?" Lorraine looked up at him. Her mascara was smudged. Her perfect hair did not look so perfect anymore. She said, "I messed up, did I not? I really messed up." James nodded slowly. He said, "Yeah, Lorraine, you really did. You really, really did." The commercial break was ending. The lights were coming back on. But something had changed forever. The show would go on, because shows always go on. But everyone who had been there that day, everyone who had watched it happen, would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. They would remember how a kind, gentle man stood up for himself when someone tried to tear him down. They would remember how grace and dignity won over cruelty and arrogance. And most of all, they would remember that 39 seconds was all it took for everything to change. 39 seconds from the moment Lorraine made that final cruel comment, calling him soft and saying he could not handle criticism, to the moment Michael Caine walked off that set with his head held high. 39 seconds that showed the world what happens when someone pushes a good person too far. 39 seconds that proved you cannot treat people badly just because you have a microphone and a camera. 39 seconds that changed everything. The cameras were rolling again. Lorraine had to finish the show. But as she looked into that camera lens, trying to put on a brave face, trying to pretend like everything was fine, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. She had learned the hardest lesson of her career. She had learned it in front of millions of people. And she had learned it from one of the kindest, most professional actors in the entire world. Michael Caine had given her a gift that day, even though it did not feel like it at the time. He had shown her what she had become. He had held up a mirror and made her look at herself. It was not a pretty sight. But sometimes the truth is not pretty. Sometimes the truth hurts. And sometimes the truth is exactly what someone needs to hear, even if they do not want to listen. As the show stumbled to its conclusion, with Lorraine trying desperately to regain control and James doing his best to help her through it, one thing became very clear to everyone watching. This was not just a story about a famous actor walking off a talk show. This was a story about respect, about kindness, about knowing when to stop, about understanding that every person, no matter how famous or successful they are, deserves to be treated with basic human decency. The audience that day went home with a story to tell. They would talk about it with their friends, their families, their coworkers, everyone they knew. They would say, "I was there. I saw it happen with my own eyes. I saw Michael Caine stand up and walk away." And when people asked them why he did it, they would explain about the insults, about the disrespect, about how Lorraine had pushed and pushed and pushed until there was nowhere left to push. Some people would say that Michael should have stayed, that he should have handled it better, that walking out was unprofessional. But most people, when they heard the whole story, when they understood what had really happened, when they heard exactly what Lorraine had said to him, they would nod and say, Good for him. Good for him for standing up for himself. Good for him for not letting her treat him that way. I would have done the same thing. And that is the thing about respect. It is not something you can demand. It is not something you can force. It is something you have to give if you want to receive it. Lorraine had forgotten that. She had gotten so used to being the one with the power, the one asking the questions, the one in control, that she had forgotten the most basic rule of human interaction. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It is simple. It is basic. But somehow she had forgotten it. Michael Caine did not need to yell or scream or make threats. He did not need to call her names or insult her back. He just needed to stand up and walk away. That simple act said more than any angry words ever could. It said, I will not accept this treatment. I will not sit here and let you insult me. I have too much respect for myself to stay in a situation where I am being treated this way. That day changed things for Lorraine Kelly. It changed how people saw her. It changed how she saw herself. Because when you watch someone as kind and gentle as Michael Caine reach their breaking point, when you watch them calmly explain why they are leaving, when you watch them walk away with their dignity intact and their head held high, it makes you wonder what you did wrong. It makes you question your choices. It makes you realize that maybe, just maybe, you are not always right. Maybe, just maybe, you made a terrible mistake. The studio emptied out slowly that day. The crew packed up the equipment, talking quietly among themselves about what they had just witnessed. The producers held emergency meetings in back rooms, trying to figure out what to do, how to handle this, how to fix the damage. Sarah went home feeling sad and disappointed about what she had witnessed. James went home feeling angry that he had not done more to stop it, that he had not stood up sooner. And Lorraine sat alone in her dressing room, staring at herself in the mirror, and wondering how she had let things get so out of control. Meanwhile, Michael Caine was already moving on with his life. He was thinking about his next project, his next role, his next adventure. He was not dwelling on what had happened. He had said what needed to be said, done what needed to be done, and now he was looking forward, not backward. Because that is what professionals do. They do not waste time on negativity. They do not hold grudges. They simply maintain their standards and keep moving forward. The lesson here is simple, but powerful and important. You can have all the fame in the world. You can have the biggest show, the brightest lights, the loudest voice, the most viewers. But if you use that platform to tear people down instead of building them up, if you use it to hurt instead of help, if you use it to satisfy your own ego instead of serving your audience, then eventually someone will call you out. And when that someone is as respected and beloved as Michael Caine, the whole world pays attention. The whole world watches. The whole world judges. That interview was supposed to be about a movie. It was supposed to be fun and light and entertaining. It was supposed to be a nice conversation between a host and a guest. But Lorraine had other ideas. She wanted drama. She wanted conflict. She wanted tension. She wanted to create a moment that people would talk about, a moment that would be remembered. And she got exactly what she wanted. People did talk about it. They talked about it a lot. They talked about it for days and weeks and months. But they were not talking about how clever she was, or how tough her questions were, or how good she was at her job. They were talking about how cruel she had been, how disrespectful, how completely out of line. Sometimes we forget that the people we see on television are real human beings with real feelings. We forget that words can hurt, even when they are said with a smile on your face. We forget that the